Hello everybody, you're welcome to Prep Station Biology SSCE tutorials, and these are the topics that we are expected to learn or that we are expected to know as you prepare for this year SSCE. Now we have cell and its environment, we have nutrition, we have nervous coordination, we have transport system, we have respiratory system, we have heredity, there's evolution there, excretory system, reproduction, we have tropism, feeding mechanisms and digestive system. We have endocrine glands and their hormones. We have regulation of internal environment. We have sense organs and ecology. Okay, but we'll be looking at cell first. We'll look at first, so that is the introductory part of biology. It is year 10 biology or SS1 biology. So please, let's look at what we have here. So at the end of this class, you are expected to be able to explain what a cell is. You are expected to state what a cell does. That means you are expected to know the function of a cell. Then you should be able to explain the different types of cells that we have and also state what is inside a cell. That is the composition of a cell. In other words, you should be able to tell us the organelles that are inside a cell. Okay, now let's move. The cell is the basic functional unit of life. All organisms that we have now are all made up of cells. Either it is one cell or it is plenty of cells. And that brings us to some cells being unicellular and some being multicellular. So now, from the simplest unicellular organisms to complex multicellular organisms, the cell is the constant building block that contains the information, the machinery, and the ability to sustain life. Either the organism is small or the organism is big. Every organism started as a single cell. I started as a single cell, even though I am a multicellular organism, but we have some organisms that are just one-celled. Are you there? Okay, so what does a cell do? Which means that what are the functions of a cell? Cell perform many different functions depending on the type of cell and the environment they are found in. That means that we have different types of cell, and the type of the cell now also determines the function of the cell. We have the brain cell, we have the nerve cell, we have the sex cell, we have the rooted cells in plants. All of them have different functions, but they are still what? Cell. Okay, now, so the typical functions include producing energy. That is what? The synthesis of ATP. Energy production, where does that happen? It happens in the mitochondria. Mitochondria is an organelle in a cell. We have cell division, which is mitosis. Now, all of us started so small. Every organism will always start so small, but as time goes on now, after months, years, you discover that the organism is increasing in size, the organism is getting bigger. Now, that happens via mitosis, where the organism the cell divide to replicate itself, to produce itself, so that the number of cells in the organism increases. Okay, we have producing protein, that is known as what? Translation. Importing nutrients and raw materials, that is known as endocytosis. We also have maintaining cell health, that means how to balance the health of a cell to be able to be sure that, okay, this cell is healthy. Now, there's a topic that we have here. I think maybe we'll do it. It talks about homeostasis, where there is a kind of balance in what is happening inside a cell. Now, we have communicating with other cells. We have digesting food and also digesting waste. Then exporting waste, signaling molecules, and that is known as what? Exocytosis. Okay. Now, let's look at this. Let's look at the different forms in which cell exists. If you look at all of us now, there are many people that we have in the world, there are many animals that we have in the world, but you know that we are not always the same thing. We are different, even though we still belong to the same species. But there's still a little variation that exists even among the population of human beings. Okay, the same thing happens among cells. So cells can exist in different forms. We have some cells that are said to be independent. That means they are free living. They do not need the approval. They do not need to form a kind of association with other cells for them to be able to survive. On their own, they can survive. They can live successfully. That is why they are said to be independent. These are free-living unicellular organisms. For example, amoeba proteus. Yes, it's an example of independent organism. An amoeba can sustain itself. It doesn't need the approval of any other organism. It does not even need anything from any other organism. Just like human being. Human being cannot be independent. Whether we like it or not, we need plants to help us produce enough oxygen. But in the case of amoeba, it doesn't need that. Okay, the next form is cell existing as colony. When you talk about colony now, coming together, forming a kind of coalition. There are plenty, it's not just one. Of course, this cell existing as a colony cannot be free living because it needs another cell to be able to survive. Example include volvus. Then we have cell existing as filament. For example, we have Spirogyra here. When you talk about cell existing as filament, it's talking about cells that would line itself up and form something that looks like a ladder. I'm sure that at this stage that you are now, you must have seen the diagram of a Spirogyra before. Now, then, as part of another living organism, this is another form. That means a cell can also exist as part of another living organism. For example, the cheek cell. I told you earlier. I talked about the Rocher cell. I talked about the nerve cell. I talked about the sex cells, right? Those are different from these three that I've explained, but they are also part of the living organism. Yes, they are part of the living organism. If they start to malfunction, it will affect the living organism. So those cells are still very, very important. Now, as part of another living organism, we have the cheek cell, we have the onion cell, we have the epidermal cell. Can you think of more, please? Just think of cells that exist as part of living organism. For example, we have the blood cells. Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's move on. So let's look at the cell theory. Please, I want to advise you that when you're watching this video, pay attention to the cell theory because you might be asked in the exam. They may ask you that you should state the cell theory. The cell theory states that all living things are made up of a cell or more. All living things are made up of a cell or more. If there is anything that does not have a cell, it is said to be acellular. So it can be said that that stuff or that thing is not a living thing. Once it is a living thing, it must have a cell. It must have a cell. Okay, the cell is the structural and functional unit of all living organisms. What does this mean? Every living organism derives its structure from the combination of different cells. Every living organism is functioning, is doing what it's supposed to do, is living a perfect and normal life because of the presence of cells. Because of the presence of cells. Now let's look at animals now. We have blood cells in the body of animals. So let's take for instance, if you see an animal that doesn't have blood cells, do you think such an animal will survive? No, it may not. It won't be able to survive because blood is very important. That's why we said functional unit of all living organisms. So if an organism does not have cell, it is not an organism. It is not a living thing. So let's move on. New cells arise from pre-existing cells. What does it mean? That means that all the new cells that we have now, they are coming into being from the ones that have been existing. So they come from the pre-existing ones, just like a parent will give birth to the offspring. A parent will give birth to a child, will reproduce. The same thing happens with cells. The blood cell will divide to produce more blood cells. The nerve cell will divide to produce more nerve cells. The sex cell will split to produce more sex cells. That is what guarantees growth, and that is what ensures that life continues. Okay, so let's move on. So let's look at the scientists that contributed to the cell theory. These guys have done a lot of work. I hope I can put my name there. Yeah, but my name is not going to be there yet. Okay, so let's look at these guys. We have Robert Hooke, we have Felix Dujardin, we have Parkin J, we have Matthias Kledin, we have Theodor Schwann, we have Rudolf Virchow, we also have Antonio van Leeuwenhoek. Is also among the scientists that contributed to the knowledge of the cell theory. I want to advise you, please pay attention to this. They can give you, in the multiple choice, they can say, okay, which of the following scientists contributed to the knowledge of cell theory, or they can say the following scientists made contributions to the knowledge of cell theory, except, please, it is very, very important. Okay, so let's move on. So let's talk about the organelles that we have in the cell. Now, when you hear the word organelles, what is the first thing that comes into your mind? When you hear the word organelles, the first thing that comes into your mind should be organ, right? Organ. Then look at the other, the suffix that we have at the back, organelle. Now, it means that these are small, small organs. Yes, they are organs, but they are not as big as the organ. They are tiny organs, which means when you have those organelles come together, they form a big organ. Okay, so we have the cell membrane. What is the work of this cell membrane now? The cell membrane is what kind of control what goes in and out of the cell. It controls what goes in and out of the cell. Of course, you know that the cell membrane is semi-permeable. What do I mean by that? It allows some substances to pass through and it blocks somehow. It shuts some substances out. So it is kind of selective. It doesn't just allow anything. So it is not porous. Yes, it is not porous. It allows some and it doesn't allow some. Then we have the cellulose cell wall. This is found in plants. This is what forms a kind of structural support for the plant. It gives the plant a very rigid structure. Then we have the cytoplasm. What is the work of the cytoplasm? Cytoplasm functions as a platform on which all the other organelles are suspended. I'll take that again. It is a platform on which the other organelles are suspended. Like you have the nucleus, you have the endoplasmic reticulum, you have your mitochondria. All of them are suspended in the mitochondria, which means this is a fluid medium. Then we have the endoplasmic reticulum, we have the vacuole, we have the nucleus. What is the work of the nucleus? This nucleus contains nucleic acid, right? And it contains genetic materials. So it has a way of controlling everything that is happening in the cell. We have the mitochondria. This guy has a nickname. The nickname is what? Is powerhouse. Why? Because it is in the mitochondria that the bulk of energy that an organism uses is produced. So during respiration now, ATP or energy is synthesized in the mitochondria. Then we also have ribosome. It functions in protein synthesis. We have lysosome, which also help us to fight foreign cells. We have chloroplast. Chloroplast is found in plants. What does it do? The chloroplast function just as your kitchen in the house. What do I mean by that? The chloroplast is the place where photosynthesis takes place. What is the process? The meaning of photosynthesis? It is the process by which plant produces its food. So now, if we have chloroplast, I said it functions like the kitchen. What do we do in the kitchen? We cook. We cook in the kitchen. So this chloroplast now is just like the kitchen that plant uses to make its food. Then we have the Golgi body and we have the centriole that help in cell division. Okay, so let's look at some of the past questions that we have here. Now, the first one says that the main similarity between unicellular and multicellular organisms is that, please share with me, when you hear unicellular organism, it means an organism that has only one cell. That's why it is called uni, one cell. Multicellular means organism with 2 cells and above. It can be 1,000, it can be 1 million, it can be billions. Of course, I can't even count the number of cells I have in my body. So I am a multicellular organism. Now let's look at this question. The main similarity between unicellular and multicellular organisms is that both, number one, or A, option A, perform all life activities. Option B, exist as filaments. Option C, are plants. Option D, exist as colony. So let's take time to look at it. All life activities, yes, either it is unicellular or multicellular. Please share with me that an organism is a multicellular organism, or let's keep that. That an organism is a unicellular organism does not mean that the organism will not be able to perform some of what a multicellular organism can do. You get it now? So even if it is unicellular, it has enough machinery to carry out everything that a multicellular organism can do. Okay, so the answer for this question is option A. Yes, the answer is option A, perform all life activities. So let's look at the next question. Okay, which of the following pairs of organisms exist as colonies? I already told you what colony is, or the type of organism that exists as colony. Now, I told you that they come together. They come. You don't see them existing one by one. They are always clustered. You always see all of them together. Obelia and euglena, no, that's not the answer. We have Pandorina and Volvus. We have Chlamydomonas and Amoeba. Now, one of the things I want you to do, if you come across questions like this and you don't really know what should be the answer, just go through all the options and start ticking them out. No, this cannot be, this cannot be, this cannot be. Then perhaps you come to a conclusion of what should be the right answer. So let's look at this. This euglena can exist alone. So it cannot exist as a colony. So that cancels out option A. Now let's look at option B. Pandorina and Volvus. Okay, let's assume that you don't know what Pandorina is, but you know what Volvus is. That was the example I gave you when I was explaining that. This was the example, Volvus. Now let's keep that. Let's come to this one. Chlamydomonas and Amoeba. Now, Chlamydomonas, let's say this was not part of it. Let's look at Amoeba. I gave you Amoeba as an independent free living organism. So it can exist on its own. So if Amoeba is here, it cancels out this Chlamydomonas too. Then let's look at this. We have Hydra and Spirogyra. I gave you this Spirogyra as a filamentous cell. It exists as a filament, meaning that euglena has cancelled out option A, Amoeba cancelled out option C, Spirogyra cancelled out option D, so we are left with option B. So let's see. Option B, the answer. Oh, that's very good. Are you there? Okay, so let's move on. Now, in which of the following multicellular organisms is interdependence of cells maintained? In which of the following multicellular organisms is interdependence of cells maintained? I told you something earlier. I said we have a kind of cell that they always come together. That is not a fashion sense. It is because there's a need for it. It is because they need to depend on each other. That is why you see them coming together. So let's see. Spirogyra, no. Volvus, no. Pandorina, no. Eudorina, no. So which one now? I've said no for all of them. Which one? Our answer here is Volvus. Then let's look at the next one. The cell membrane of a cell is said to be semi-permeable. I explained that. It is semi-permeable because it is not porous. At the same time, it is not completely blocked. It's not that it shuts out all other organisms or all materials. No, it allows some and it doesn't allow some. So it is kind of selective. Yes, you may come in, but you don't come in. But you can come in. Okay, so let's look at the options. Option A, it allows only large molecular substances to pass through it into the cell. Option B, it allows, pay attention to option A, only large. If it is allowing large, then why will it not allow the small ones? You get it now? So if the gate is this big, if this large, and if an aeroplane can come through the gate, forget it. Cars and bicycles would always come in. Even human beings will come in. So this is not the answer. Let's look at option B. It actively allows all substances to pass through it by diffusion. I already told you that the cell membrane is not porous. So if they say it allows all, that makes it porous. No, that's not the answer. Option C, it is actively selective in allowing substances through it. It is actively selective, which means it allows some and it does not allow others. Then option D, fatty acids are only the building block. No, let's keep this. So our answer is option C. Let's see. Now, it is actively selective in allowing substances through it. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Now, in which of the following parts of a cell is the chromosome found? I told you something earlier when I was talking about the organelles in a cell, right? I talked about an organelle that contains genetic material. And I said it has a way of controlling activities in the cell, right? So let's look at it. What do you think that would be? We have nucleus, Golgi body, cytoplasm. We have the cell wall and cell membrane. Can we think, please? What do you think would be the answer? The answer is nucleus, because it is in your nucleus that you have genetic material. What are genetic materials? They are materials that facilitate inheritance. They are materials that facilitate what? Heredity, such that traits or characters from the parents can be transferred to their children. So we have your gene, we have your chromosome. Those are organelles that help us to carry out that process. So let's see if we are correct. Yes, nucleus. Nucleus. So let's move to the next question. The first scientist to describe the cell was, please pay attention. Option A is Prep Station. How I wish that can be the answer. Option B is Robert Hooke. Then we have Charles Darwin, and we have Antonio van Leeuwenhoek. Let me help you. Now, I'm going to start from option D. Antonio van Leeuwenhoek, what did he do? He was not the first to describe the cell, but he was the first guy to come with something called microscope. Yes, that's what he did. Then this Charles Darwin now, his one is all about genetics. Then this guy, Robert Hooke, what he did was, he was the first person to come across something like a cell. He was the first scientist to describe the cell. The name he called it was not cell. He called it something like either little man or something like that. But he was the first person to describe the cell. So let's see if we are correct. Yes, Robert Hooke. That's good. So let's move to the next question. Now, which of the following organelles differentiate a plant cell from an animal cell? What does it mean? That means what differentiates plant cell from an animal cell? We have the cell membrane, mitochondria, lysosome, and chloroplast. So let's look at it. Is there cell membrane in plant? Yes. Is there cell membrane in animal? Yes. Mitochondria, do we have it in plant and animal? Yes. Lysosome, do we have it in two of them? Yes. What about chloroplast? We have chloroplast in plant, but we do not have chloroplast in animal. So our answer is D, chloroplast. Okay. The answer is D, chloroplast. Okay. So which of the following helps remove excess water from the cell? How do we remove excess water from the cell? In other words, they are asking you which of the following is an excretory system. We have mitochondria, we have the ribosome, we have the contractile vacuole, and the Golgi apparatus, please. So the answer is contractile vacuole. You see it? Okay. If you have looked through amoeba very well, you discover that amoeba has this, and that's the way by which it excretes its waste. Okay. We are almost running up. Now, most of the energy in the cell is produced in the, I told you earlier, and I said there's a particular organelle here that the nickname is powerhouse. Can you remember? Mitochondria. So our answer is B. Yes. Our answer is B, mitochondria. Okay, so we'll pause now, then we'll come back and continue later.